And now to the other big story this morning. The alleged killer of the United Healthcare CEO waking up in a federal jail in New York.
Yeah, 26-year-old Luigi Mangione was held without bail following his first appearance in a Manhattan federal court yesterday following his extradition.
Mangione now faces a total of 20 charges against him, including 4 federal charges, 11 state counts in New York, and 5 state counts in Pennsylvania.
The 4 federal charges filed against him are 2 counts of stalking, murder through use of a firearm, and firearms offense. Those charges could bring the death penalty if convicted.
The federal complaint also gave more details about that notebook allegedly found with Mangione during his arrest in Pennsylvania. One entry, dated August 15th, said, "The details are finally coming together, and I'm glad in a way that I procrastinated," saying it allowed him more time to learn about the company he was targeting, whose name was redacted. The entry also said, "The target is insurance. It checks every box."
Well, for now, Mangione is being held in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, which is the only federal prison in New York City. He's expected to return to court in mid-January. After the hearing, one of Mangione's lawyers spoke to the media.
We're going to respectfully decline to make any comment at this time, but Mr. Mangione appreciates everyone's support. Thank you so much.
Let's bring in federal defense attorney Ron Chapman. Ron, we appreciate you joining us here on Morning on Merit. These federal charges came as a curveball to Mangione's defense team. Even his own attorney said she thought she was heading to the New York State Court to address the state indictment, but now he faces 4 federal charges in addition to his state charges. Why add the federal charges too?
Well, honestly, I was surprised that the feds didn't take over the investigation to begin with, but I think they had a lot of deference to New York City. Had this been any other city, I think it would be a federal investigation all the way. But the reason the federal charges are here is because, first, the concept of double jeopardy doesn't apply here. You can be tried in state court and then tried in federal court and convicted of both for largely the same conduct. But the other thing, and a big part of this, is to get Mangione into a plea deal to avoid a very public trial. The federal charges carry the death penalty. There's a potential there. And with that hanging over his head, there's a chance he decides to deal out both cases, and we don't have to deal with the sort of fandom that we've seen in a very public trial with Mangione as the defendant.
You know, that's a good point. You do have this sort of back and forth between the state case and the federal case. Who is going to go first? You know, Alvin Bragg said they were going to run it parallel. But late last night, prosecutors said that the state case is expected to proceed before the federal trial. Now, does that surprise you? Because, as you said, in the federal case, he could potentially get the death penalty. In the state case, the most he could get is life without possibility of parole. Wouldn't they want to do the federal case first since he has the higher penalty there?
Well, and this just proves the point. The federal case acts as the sort of Damocles over his head, waiting for something to happen in the state case. So even if for some reason he was to be acquitted, they would have this second bite at the apple. It's much better for Alvin Bragg and the federal prosecutors to position that federal case right after the state case so that they can try to get him to deal down both of them. Now, whether a case is tried first federally or state, that's usually a matter of agreement. These are things we used to work out all the time. It makes sense here, given that we have a murder, which is traditionally going to be a state act unless it's against a federal official. The primary offense that we're dealing with is a state offense, and that should be tried in New York. And I'm sure Alvin Bragg is happy to be able to carry on that trial.
We saw the perp walk yesterday, all eyes on that moment. It felt very Jerry Bruckheimer movie-esque. There was a lot of security and even some top officials like Mayor Eric Adams and the police commissioner. Why so much security for that moment?
Well, you know, I think that the reputation of New York in keeping high-profile defendants away from harm has probably been impacted by some of the Epstein issues. And I think that they want to give the appearance to the public that they are protecting this person from anybody trying to harm him, but also protecting the public from this person. I think that this is a moment where everybody gets to make sure that this person is handed over for justice to be done. And so the perp walk is a very highly visible thing. I mean, it almost looks like people had to buy tickets to this thing. There's so many people at the perp walk. But the reality is that it's very important for the American public to see the defendant going into the courthouse to face the American system of justice. That's what law enforcement believes. And that's what we have here. I just hope that they're able to make sure that he makes it all the way to trial or plea so that we can make sure that justice is delivered one way or another.
All right. Ron Chapman, we appreciate you joining us here on Morning on Merit, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.